This is the third video in a series focusing on roasting with the Sweet Maria's popper. Last week I roasted a medium to medium light roast. The week before I did a review on the roaster, and today we're going to be roasting a medium dark roast on the Sweet Maria's popper, so stick around. All right, thanks for joining me today. Got things set up a little bit differently here. We're going to be using a meat thermometer that has an external probe to be able to measure the air temperature in the roaster. You can see here that I have this digital display and it's plugged in and it has a wire that goes up and just goes onto the edge of the popper and sets at the bottom of the roasting chamber. We're also going to be using this software that is free to use online. It's a web URL that you go to. It works in your browser on your smartphone, and you can track the time of the roast, and then when you hit the first crack event, it starts to measure development time for you. So we'll see that in action as well. I'll put a link to that in the description below here in the video. All right, so we're going to put 90 grams of Guatemalan Weiwei coffee into the roaster and get started. Our goal is about a 9-minute roast, and I'm looking for a 40% dry phase, a 35% browning phase, and a 25% development. So because we're going darker, we want to be able to have a good development on this coffee. We want to have at least 20%. I'm aiming for probably more like 25%. And what that's going to do is it's going to get that bean roasted all the way through. It's going to tame down any acidity that is in the coffee, and it's going to allow this caramelization to continue. So hopefully we're going to get a full-bodied coffee that's kind of sweet and has some chocolatey notes. Now, the coffee that I roasted last week I mentioned was tart. So this is the same coffee that we're going to be roasting here. The profile that I used, I had a 30% browning phase, and I said that it was too tart and I wanted to lengthen that to about 36%. Well, I did that. I shortened my dry phase and I lengthened my browning phase so that I could get that 36%. And I got a great cup of coffee that had a little bit of acidity along with a chocolatey note and kind of an underlying sweetness. It was really a good cup of coffee. What I did notice was that compared to my drum roaster, that it wasn't as complex of a cup. It was a little more of a flat cup than when I would do it on the drum roaster. But the clarity and or the brightness of the coffee seemed to be a little muted, but it was definitely not a tart bomb. So definitely an improvement. And I was happy with the cup of coffee. It was a good cup of coffee. All right, well, with this roast, we're looking to be able to go a little darker. So we're going to get some real dark chocolates. We are hoping to get like a burnt brown sugar kind of a sweetness that is in this cup with some more body, and there won't be any acidity. So that's the goal. The drop temperature, I'm not sure exactly what the drop temperature is going to be, but our goal is, like I said, to have a 22 to 25% development on this roast. So let's get started. Now, this probe intentionally is just set in here, and it touches the bottom, and it's going to move around. And so in order to have it move around, we need to be sure that we don't pinch this cord. So we're just going to close this on the left side. We're going to leave this side unlatched, and that way this wire can move. All right, I'm going to have my heat set at 1250. I'm going to have the timer set to 10 minutes, and we're going to get started. The alarm on the thermometer will go off shortly after we begin the roast, and it's because it is a food thermometer, and it is, I think right now the alarm is set for 200 degrees or something like that. So I'll just shut that off when that goes off. All right, let's get going. All right, we've got the timer set, and we're quickly going up to the 200-degree mark here on the thermometer. And we'll take a look at the beans moving here in just a second. All right, there's the alarm. All right, let's take a look at the bean movement. And it's swirling around, and you can see that that probe moves with it, and that's okay. So yeah, the probe is reading the air temperature in the roaster, and our goal is to be able to reach dry end at 3 minutes and 45 seconds. So we're going to watch the timer. To make sure we're headed in that right direction. Just make sure we got this exactly where we need it. We got some chaff coming off the roaster right now. That's expected. Bean movement we saw as the moisture leaves the bean, the further along we go in the roast, the more movement those beans will have. And we're at 1.5 minutes right now, 306 degrees. And the beans are moving around. All right, now what we'll see on the temperature is that at first it really increases. And now you'll see that it's slowly climbing a couple degrees. Every time it blinks, there's a degree. But it's going to plateau. And what we want to make sure is that we time this roast so at 3 minutes and 45 seconds we get to dry end. And we see there's just a little bit of paling, in the beans. Let's take a look at that. All right. Two minutes and 47 seconds. So we've got 3:15. I'm bumping this up. We got 15 seconds. I bumped it up to 1. And we're going to be a little later than that. 13, 14. Let's take a look at these beans together. And I would say we're just about there now. So that's 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So I'm going to need to adjust my time on my next phase, which was going to be, actually we timed it for 3:40 and I called it at 3:30. So we're about 10 seconds early. The next milestone, let me turn the timer up. I'm not using this timer. I'm not using this timer because I'm using this clock instead. It's easier for me to use. But 3:30 was our event, and so the next event is going to be at about 6:07 is when we want to hit first crack. And we're at 4:26 right now. Let's take a look. Temperature-wise, we are slowly climbing, as you can see what's happening there. I was wrong on my event time, so it's 7 minutes. It was originally supposed to be at 3:40, but it was at 3:30. And 3 minutes and 15 seconds later, so that's 6:45. And I would say it's probably going to be closer to 6:35 is what we're targeting. And that's a minute and a half. Definitely got the cinnamon thing going. So we're on track. So I'm going to let that go for about another 20 seconds or so, and then I'm going to bump the heat up. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bump it up now to 110. And then we'll watch the color, watch our temperatures. You can see the temperatures rising. So we're looking for a 6:35. That's in about 45 seconds. And I'm going to bump this back down just a little to about 1 o'clock. This is where I'm trying to manage the heat to get me to that time of about 6:35. So that is in about 25 seconds. I'm going to go back up to about 110. Here we go. And let's see if we can do this. Temperature's going up. And there's an outlier at 6:35, but not a crack. All right, there's first crack at 6:45. I marked it a couple seconds late. That's okay. So we're still lagging a little behind, but that's okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm watching on here, I'm watching this development time. And you can see that it's showing a percentage. Right now it's at 4.5% development. I'm going to let this kind of make sure I'm fully rolling into first crack. And then I'm going to turn this power down just a little bit here. So I'm at 426. And I'm going to keep it around there. So I bumped it back down to 1. And I am at 10%. I'm going to turn my clock up again. All right, I'm at a 12% development right now. And I'm just slowly, I'm actually going down just a hair. I'm going to bump this back up. And I'm watching the temperature as I turn this dial. All right, we are at 16%. So around 22% development, I am going to go into the cool mode on this. And I'm doing that intentionally. Watch my temperatures. I'm going to come back down just a hair. I'm doing that intentionally because there's going to be a little more development that takes place because of the high temperatures before I get this thing to cool down. So we're at 20% development. 2 more and I'm going to go into the cool mode. I'm going to actually get us down, and we're at 22 right now. So I'm in the cool mode and I'm opening the lid. Watch what happens to the temperature. If I can get this down to 300, 250 degrees, which is right about, 300, stop. All right, so a 9-minute and 7-second roast. Let's take a look at the beans. Look at the air movement. They lost a lot of moisture, so they're bouncing around. Definitely, you can see the beans are a little smooth, so we're definitely fully developed. Nice. And so we had maybe a minute go by so far, and we're already down to 150 degrees. The popper cools quick. I really, really enjoy the cool down on the popper. Nice job, Sweet Maria's, on that. All right, we're about to do the tasting of the Guatemalan Huehue, that medium dark roast that I roasted on the popper. The coffee has rested for a couple of days, and I've just brewed the coffee. I used a clever dripper. I've got a couple pictures here you can see of the clever dripper and the brewing going on, and it steeped for about 3 minutes and 45 seconds, and then I started to do the draw, and it took about a minute to do the draw. So total steep time was about 4.5 minutes on the average by the time the coffee was totally released. All right, so the goal for this coffee was to have a coffee with no acidity that had some darker notes. And this kind of goes into the darker roasts that people like. The difference is that this coffee did not go into second crack. My total roast time was 9 minutes and 7 seconds. So what I'm going to do is, as I've done in the last few videos, I'm going to break this roast down into total seconds. The number of seconds of the roast was 547. That's 9 minutes and 7 seconds worth of seconds. And I'm going to break it into phases. So the first phase was 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. That's how long it took the coffee to go from charge when we started the roaster till dry end, and that's a total of 210 seconds. 38% of the roast was the dry phase. Our first crack event took place at 6:45. That's a total of 195 seconds. For the browning phase, that's 35%. And then from first crack to drop, that total time was 142 seconds, which was 25.8%, something like that. And you saw what I did was I actually hit the cool button and then waited 15 seconds. If I were to have just hit the cool right then and then said that's my cool down, or that's my total development time, it would have been closer to 22%. So that's up for debate how you want to work that out and figure that out. But ultimately, my expectation of this coffee is definitely going to be darker notes, no acidity. I'm looking for, I think I mentioned earlier, the dark chocolates, some sweetness, and we're going to go ahead and see what this tastes like now. All right. Medium to medium heavy body coffee. There is some complexity. There's a lingering dirtiness on the tongue. It's not a bitter coffee at all. It's definitely a darker chocolate. I am getting a little bit of a sweetness. It's like a burned caramel. And it's pretty good. It's a pretty good coffee. It's pretty much what I expected. There is no acidity, and the flavors definitely linger on the tongue. So it's definitely not a clean cup of coffee. And I think that's what a lot of people like, that like the darker roast. They like that lingering sensation on the tongue. And I think that this roast accomplished that. So you can, there's a lot of questions whether the popper can roast dark. And you don't need to go into second crack to get some of those notes. You just need a longer development time. I think that would make a big difference. As a matter of fact, this could be something that could be used for espresso too. So you might want to check that out, try that out. So you don't need to get oils on your coffee. You don't need to go into second crack to knock down the acidity and to get the body a little bit of sweetness. And there's some, maybe even a tobacco that I'm tasting in here too. So definitely some darker notes. So this is a good cup of coffee, and the popper did a good job. I like the popper a lot more than I did a week ago. A lot more than I did a week ago. And I think the biggest turn for me was being able to see what was happening with the temperatures. That may sound silly. That might not sound like a big deal to some people who aren't used to looking at temperatures at all. But for me, coming from a drum roaster and a Bmore, I'm constantly looking at temperatures and understanding what's happening with my roast. And using this setup with a $13 meat thermometer, and you don't have to drill any holes. I guess you could, and you could follow the instructions. Sweet Maria's has a video on where to drill the hole on a regular popcorn popper and just kind of use the similar technique. You could do that. But with the method I did, you don't need to do that. And you're not losing a lot of heat out of the top. That lid stays on. Most of the chaff is staying in place. And overall, I would keep that setup, and it really helped me understand what the popper can do. For 89 bucks or whatever the price is, for under $100, the popper is a great deal. If you are interested in getting into coffee roasting, don't waste your time with the popcorn popper and trying to modify it. Start with the popper from Sweet Maria's and then take it from there. Today's takeaway for the popper can be applied to drum roasters. It can be applied to those people that are on a hot top or a Beemore, because we're dealing with phase percentages and the effects of that and how you might want to tweak or change your coffee. We've been roasting the same coffee for the last few weeks, and we get our different results based on the profile we're using. And 10 seconds or 15 seconds can make a difference. And so there's some takeaway here. The takeaway is we need to make sure we identify our roasting phase event times. So when we call yellow, when we call first crack, when we call our drop, depending upon the type of roaster that we have, right? All those things are really important for us to be able to chart, and that's the other thing we need to do. If you want to figure out what's happening with your coffee, you need to be able to chart your roasts, write it all down, and figure it all out so that when you make changes, you can taste the changes and you can see the changes, both of those. I hope that that makes sense to you guys. There's been a lot of questions in the comments and some discussion about all of this. I would encourage you to go ahead and do that. I would encourage you to leave your comments if you've got questions about this roast. Do you have a popper? Have you tried to roast dark? Are you charting your roasts? All those are great questions that I would love to hear your experiences with. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you guys have liked this video. If you did, hit the like button. That would be awesome. More importantly, subscribe to this channel, and that would really help me out a lot. I'd appreciate that. Also, people are leaving lots of comments. They're asking questions, and it is a great learning experience for both me and those that are visiting this channel. So check out the comments. If you want to make suggestions of what you'd like to see for future videos, you can leave that in the comments as well. I also have a community post for those that haven't done this yet. Tell me what kind of roaster you're roasting on. There's a community post about that. Take the poll. And also, if you would like certain topics discussed here on this channel, I have a question about topics, and you can leave your comments there. That would be awesome. So thanks again for joining me. I hope you guys have a great week roasting. We'll see you next time.